Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Travels with Monkey Boy. Today, I'm going to be taking you to the strange world of Saudi Arabia. Picture in the background, by the way, not Saudi Arabia. This is a cave in Japan. I don't know. I just like the background. Anyway, I'm going to share my screen with you. We got to start from the beginning as always. And remember, this is where I'm coming from, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Here's my house in here. Country Club Road. Come and visit me sometime. Anyway, so moved to Saudi Arabia 25 years ago, I guess it was. Saudi Arabia is a very strange place. Let me talk to you as we zoom out. Saudi Arabia had, hold on, here we come. We're flying up into space, going across to New York, across the Atlantic. There we go. Here's Saudi Arabia. Let's get this centered for us. And there it is, Saudi Arabia. And we lived in Jeddah. Right here is where I lived, Al Rumayya compound, the beginning. A very brief story of Al Rumayya compound. Here it is. Compounds in Saudi Arabia, if you look, they have very tall walls around them. They are a sort of a little enclave away from the population, sort of like we're zooed in. They keep the locals away from us and keep us away from the locals. If you can see, there's a swimming pool right here. And I have a nice story because my apartment was right here. And while I was staying at Al Rumayya compound, there was a beautiful young German woman. And every day I was quite surprised after some time. They moved in maybe a year after we got there. And every day she would go out at about 3 o'clock and she would strip down to her bikini bottoms, topless, and go swimming. Well, naturally, I was outraged at this. And every day I would get out my notebook and I would sit with my binoculars in my apartment and document all of the inappropriate behavior that she was doing. This is not public nudity in the US, which is frowned upon. This is not Germany where public nudity is encouraged. This is Saudi Arabia where the women are veiled and covered in abaya from head to toe. So anyway, every day I was documenting the inappropriate behavior in my notebook. And then after 6 months, we moved compounds and I never had a chance to turn it in. So anyway, Saudi Arabia. So this is where we lived. And I worked, where did I work? It's on here someplace. I worked way down here. Al Zaman Travel, we worked Al Zaman General Trading. It was pretty close to there. It was about a 30-minute drive in for me each day. The school was over in this area for the kids. And if you drove just a little north, this is where all the beach clubs were. And there were some beautiful beach clubs right along here. The weird thing is they didn't have a bridge across here, so you had to go all the way up here and around to get to the beach clubs. But they had beautiful reefs and tropical fish like nothing. The Red Sea is a great destination. Problem is, while we were there, they were destroying the reefs in order to build more hotels and ugly things that humans make. Anyway, so the point of the story today is I'm talking about public executions. I had told my driver Musfin that I wanted to go to the public executions at some point. They don't announce them. It's not in the paper or anything. They're just sort of called out. And as I said, Saudi Arabia, a very strange place. When I was born in 1961, slavery was still legal in Saudi Arabia. It wasn't abolished till 1962. Wasn't abolished in Oman until 1970. So you hear all about America's slavery issues from 150 years ago. This was in my lifetime. Other weird thing is the public executions. They still do crucifixions in Saudi Arabia. In fact, there was a crucifixion within the last decade in Saudi Arabia. They also do stoning to death, though thankfully it hasn't happened in 30 or 40 years. This is more common in Iran. The way they do the stonings is they bury you up to your neck in sand. They give out stones that are dictated by the court. They approve the type of stones that you can throw. And then you in the burial have time to try to get out while they're throwing rocks at you. And if you die, alas, that's the way it was meant to be. But the vast, vast majority of public executions were with an executioner with a long curved sword. And that's what I was there to witness. So one day, after I had been in Saudi Arabia several years, my driver came into my office and he said, "It's on." And I said, "What?" And he said, "The executions are taking place down in Chop Chop Square in a little while." So they perform the executions in this parking lot of a government building, not 10 minutes away from my office. And initially I sent him away saying, what sort of gruesome monster would I be to go watch people get killed? And then I remembered what sort of gruesome monster I am. So I called him back and I said, okay, let's go. When in Rome, do what the Romans do. I think it's important for people to see what's unique and special about a country when you go there. In Saudi Arabia, you cannot see what's unique and wonderful because as a non-Muslim, you are not permitted to go to Mecca or Medina. So the other thing that makes it sort of a weird and interesting place is the executions. So anyway, I got in the car and we drove to this square, and there was a little within the parking lot, there was a small hill, maybe 6 or 8 feet tall, that was sort of ringed around this parking thing. And because I was a Westerner, they allowed me a prime spot on top of that hill so I would have a good view. There were a multitude of people there. There were hundreds and hundreds of people there. And again, they don't announce it. It's just word of mouth. It's happening today, spreads through the community, and people go running from the buildings to go watch it. The day I was there, so anyway, I get in my position, and then you hear the sirens coming, and the sirens have a police wagon that come and have the 7 criminals, I'll put that in quotation marks, that were to be executed that day. Now, in Saudi Arabia, there's a number of reasons you can be executed. One of them is if you convert from Islam to another religion, they can kill you. Murder, obviously, rape, the sort of terrorism, the things that we would consider acceptable. In Saudi Arabia, it's also executable offense to be gay or transvestite. And sorcery is also an executable. Witchery and sorcery is an executable offense. And there have been at least 3 people in the last 15 years that have been killed for being witches. So, as I said, kind of a weird place. Anyway, so the ambulances come, not the ambulance, the police wagon comes, pulls into the parking lot as I'm watching, and they escort 7 people out of the wagon. And each person has a bag over their head. They have their hands tied behind their back, and they're forced out at gunpoint to get out of the wagon. Supposedly they're sedated, heavily sedated before they do that. And they force the people to kneel down with a straight back and their necks out. Remember, their hands are behind their head. And in the spot, there are 2 executioners, 2 men in complete white thobe and gutra, the sort of dress and of the locals that I'm sure you've seen many times. There are 2 of them completely white with long curved swords. And the victims sit down, they're kneel down, and there's 2 in the front, there's 3 in the middle, and there's 2 in the back. One of them is a woman, and the woman is covered from head to toe with the abaya. Um, and then the man comes out and reads the charges in Arabic and then translated into English. And it's Abdul Mohsen, drugs from Bangladesh, and Hamid from Algeria, drugs. And they read through the whole list, and every one of the people that was captured there was for drugs. And part of the reason that they had this large number, and this was happening every Thursday for a long period of time, is that prior to me, so when I was there 25 years ago, when you would come into Saudi Arabia, they would open up your suitcase, they would open up your shaving kit, they would open up pill boxes, they would open up everything. It would take you an hour to get through customs when you come into the country, because they were looking for contraband, looking for drugs primarily. And every full flight coming in you would have 2 or 3 people that they would catch with drugs. Then when I was there, they bought a bunch of drug sniffing dogs from the US. And all of a sudden they got 10 or 15 people on every flight. And remember, so every one of the people that was captured was foreigners. But what was happening is the Saudis would go to foreigners and they would say, and it's an important part of Islam, and Islam is a very nice religion. It's very devout, and they spend a lot of time thinking about God, and it's a nice thing. But part of the religion is, at one point in your life you should perform the Hajj, and the Hajj is a formalized time and place where you go to Mecca and Medina, you walk back and forth, you walk a specific trail, you perform a series of prayers and things like that. And it helps you get into heaven if you perform the Hajj. Every good Muslim wants to do this in their life. It's important for them to do that in their lives. But in a lot of countries, the people are too poor and they can't perform the Hajj. Well, what the Saudis would do, the rich Saudi princes and the like, would go to these poor countries and they would say, Abdul Rahman, I will pay for you to come perform the Hajj, and the only thing I ask in return is for you to bring this small box for my mother, and it would be all wrapped up and the like, and then we'll pay for everything for you to get there. And of course the box was filled with drugs, but the people didn't know this. The flight would land, they would get their suitcase, the drug sniffing dogs would find them out, they would pull them aside, they would throw them in prison, and eventually they ended up at Chop Chop Square. So really kind of a horrible thing all the way around. Also, as a libertarian, you think, what is the ultimate crime of drugs? You're kind of screwing up your own life. And here we're cutting people's heads off over they're trying to give pleasure to somebody else. Up to you to decide on that. But anyway, they read off the measures, and the people again are kneeling there. All 7 of them are kneeling. And the executioner in front, I'm watching him, and he walks up to the very first person and he just goes like this. He just flicks his wrist. The sword comes down, hits the neck. The head falls like a sandbag to the ground, and blood spurts out like 30 feet. It's a tremendous gush. 30 feet is what, 10 meters. Tremendous gush of blood. Quite gruesome, actually. But he didn't get a drop of blood on him. And he goes to the next person and he does the same thing. And he's very efficient as he's going. Well, then my attention turned to the guy at the back, and I watched him, and he swung his sword and he hit the guy in the shoulder. And then he swung again, and this time he got him. And then he went to the next person, and the same thing happened. He swung and missed. And then with the second whack, he got him. And then he went to this very old man, old Indian looking man, big, long white beard. And he swung and he hit him in the shoulder. And so he missed. And then he swung again on the other side and he missed again. And then finally on the third whack, he took the head off. And I turned to my driver and I said, Misfit, the guy in the front is really good, but is the guy in the back just training? Because he's really bad at it. And Musfin said, no, sir, that this is dictated by Sharia court. It's 1 whack, 2 whacks, or 3 whacks, depending upon the severity of the crime. If you get 3 whacks, that means you got a long time to think about the pain and things that you've done. Anyway, in the course of 10 minutes, and I'm not minimizing this, in the course of 10 minutes, I saw 7 people get murdered in front of me. They loaded up the security people and the executioners into the police vehicles. They drove away, and Miss Finn took me back to the car. And I remember thinking as I'm kicking at the dirt, wearing burgundy dress shoes from Allen Edmonds, and I still remember those shoes. I still remember the dirt on them, and people ask me if I was traumatized by it, and I don't know that I was traumatized outside of that. It's sort of burnt in my memory, this sort of gruesome thing, but one has to be conscious of what one does in other countries and their different rules. So anyway, that's all I have to say about the public executions. It was a weird thing in a weird place, and I will have more stories about Saudi Arabia coming up. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice day, and we'll talk to you later.